Greetings, everyone. My name is Mary Pat, and I'll be your host for today's event. If you're like me, for most of this year, you've spent a great deal of time on business virtual in the business virtual world. Probably been online with a whole bunch of meetings as well as a variety of webinars. Each one of those platforms has a slightly different look and feel, and the features are a little bit different. So I'd like to draw your attention to the lower left corner of your screen. There you'll see two tabs. The chat box, which allows you to communicate with everyone that's actually attending today, and also the question and answer tab. And that's the one, that feature is what we'd like you to use throughout this webinar to submit your questions. Our presenter, Dr. Paola Cane, will be answering your questions after her presentation. Well, 2020 is a year we will all remember for a lot of reasons. But from a business perspective, it's been one that has served as a living proof of the value of being prepared in advance for an unforeseen business disruption. Whatever the cause of that disruption, having a crisis management plan in place before the event takes place helps your company more effectively chart its course through and then out of that disruption. It's our hope today that the hour that you're investing with us is one that's well spent, because you should leave the webinar with several practical ideas, or at least a little different perspective or a new perspective to consider incorporating into your company's crisis management plan. Next, we'd like to devote a few minutes to a short video that briefly presents the what, where, and why our organization WISHH does the work we do with our partners around the world.
Do you see potential for economic progress that also improves human and animal nutrition in countries with some of the fastest growing populations in the world? Do you want to partner to find solutions for the protein gaps found in Africa, Asia, and Central America? If you can join us in capturing business opportunities in nutritious foods and feeds, then stay tuned. Visionary U.S. soybean growers founded the World Initiative for Soy in Human Health, or WISHH, as a program of the American Soybean Association. We are committed to strengthening agricultural market systems in developing and emerging economies in order to improve food security and build long-term demand for U.S. soy. Our work supports businesses, governments, and non-governmental organizations from Guatemala to Uganda to Cambodia to introduce nutritious foods and feeds that grow their businesses and economies. At WISHH, we focus on regions where U.S. soy markets don't exist yet, blazing new trails in new sectors around the world. For example, WISHH has made significant impacts in Central America by partnering with companies that use U.S. soy to manufacture more nutritious foods and beverages. In Asia, WISHH partners have expanded their businesses by putting U.S. soy in fish feed for the first time. And in sub-Saharan Africa, local entrepreneurs have partnered with WISHH to grow businesses that sell delicious and nutritious soy-based local foods, as well as feeds for poultry, fish, and more. So what can a partnership with WISHH do for you? Working on behalf of U.S. soybean farmers, our goal is to create global partnerships and provide new opportunities for businesses and entrepreneurs that expand the potential for trade. Our approach is designed to increase demand, fuel economic growth, and connect entrepreneurs. The best part is that we do this at no cost to you. So how does it work? Thanks to decades of accumulated knowledge, we tap into expert resources to educate, mentor, and network to help your business grow both in size and through the latest innovations. Thanks to our soy experts, who are deeply connected to the regions where we work, we offer you face-to-face education and technical expertise. Working in developing and emerging markets, we identify market sectors with real potential for growth, work with key stakeholders, and provide effective trade solutions. While serving as an incubator, We connect driven leaders with supply chain partners. We help you network for strategic partnerships and create opportunities to launch a new product or service. And our go-to market strategists offer a localized approach, the right resources, the right expertise, and the right systems for better nutrition and improved food security in your market. At WISHH, our greatest strength is our ability to facilitate strategic partnerships throughout the world to promote the benefits of soy. WISHH and the American Soybean Association have the vision and the voice to continue to build awareness, create partnerships, and drive change for a healthier world.
Before we get to Dr. Cane, I'd like to just make two comments. One, truly don't be shy with your questions. Go ahead and submit them. This is your opportunity to get some free advice, so the price is right. I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce you to Liz Hare, our Executive Director. Liz has a few thoughts she'd like to share with you today before she introduces Dr. Cane.
Welcome to WISH's second webinar in a three-part series. I'm Liz Hare, the Executive Director of the WISHH program at the American Soybean Association. WISHH is convening this webinar series as part of our Mobilizing Entrepreneurs initiative, which is funded by the United Soybean Board. Our series brings global insights to entrepreneurs to support overcoming obstacles in supply chains in developing and emerging markets. COVID-19 and the need for crisis management makes it natural to focus on the challenges that we all face in simply maintaining our operations. At times like this, it can be overwhelming to think about the growth of a business or an organization. However, I would like to share 3 trends or recent studies that remind us all of the important opportunities for business and nutrition leaders like you. First, the State of Food Security and Nutrition report, released in July, specifically emphasized the importance of accelerating the production of protein-rich foods. Protein is key to lifelong individual health as well as the growth of economies. U.S. soy delivers high-quality protein for soy foods as well as livestock and aquaculture feeds. Second, the Food and Agriculture Organization's State of the World's Fisheries and Agriculture 2020 report documents a 527% rise in global aquaculture production from 1990 to 2018. It states the priority should be to further develop aquaculture in Africa and in other regions where population growth will challenge food systems most. WISHH has an extensive track record in aquaculture. Currently, we are implementing a U.S. Department of Agriculture project in Cambodia, where WISHH works closely with the Cambodian Ministry of Agriculture, U.S. universities like Kansas State, and other partners. And third, multiple global reports and leaders have stressed the importance of keeping trade corridors open during COVID-19. WISHH connects trade and development. We are committed to working with strategic partners like yourselves to capture the benefits of doing business with the U.S. soy industry. Now I am pleased to introduce our webinar speaker, who will speak to navigating the challenges of food and feed safety through disruptions like COVID-19. Dr. Paola Cane is a world-renowned expert and author. Dr. Cane is an expert on regulatory compliance, product recalls, and marketing, as well as crisis management plans. By the end of today's webinar, we will all recognize why crisis management readiness is essential in order to maximize our crisis response, save time, enhance our organization's reputation, and gain and maintain competitive advantage. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Cane here to share the latest insights on food safety. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Cane.
Hello, anyone, and thanks for being here. I'm Paola Cane, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, Planning to Cope with Crisis, Doing the Right Thing at the Right Time. This webinar has been designed to help leaders like you navigate significant disruptions, a situation that unfortunately have become increasingly familiar to many of us during the last months. Today, we will try to understand what crisis management is and why manufacturers should proactively plan to cope with crisis. Our webinar is divided into 3 sections. The first one, we will understand what crisis management is and why it is so important. We will explore a typical crisis management life cycle. The second section is focused on the crisis management plan and its contents. That is the milestone of any crisis, and it is very essential not only to face COVID-19, but also to cope with many similar crises that impend on today's business complex environment. In the third section, Plan or Planning, we'll wrap up our webinar asking ourselves, how can we plan for the unexpected? Is there a plan that can fit all the crises? We will consider the typical limits of a crisis management plan and how to go beyond them. Having a plan is not enough. The ability to anticipate threats, to cope effectively with unexpected abrupt events is a key skill that doesn't lay upon a manual, but is based on a method and on the correct approach. Acquiring this correct critical action process to lead your decision-making under pressure will help you protect the most important asset: health, business continuity, reputation, and trust. And I'm confident that before the end of this webinar, we'll all come to the conclusion that crisis management readiness is essential in order to maximize crisis response, save time, enhance company's reputation, gain and maintain your competitive advance. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Today, we all have a fresh and vivid idea of what a crisis is. Nevertheless, I wish to start giving you a brief definition of crisis. A crisis is a sudden, unexpected, negative event due to unknown or undervalued causes which can significantly alter normal business and compromise the safety of your company, of your employees, and your customer and market. That requires a sudden decision to be taken. Crisis has many faces: pandemics, natural disasters, facility problems, info leaks, product tampering, ethical transgressions, environmental disasters, and non-conformity that can lead to product recall. Whatever the form it takes, it can compromise the safety of your company, employees, and customer base. Even if not as dramatic as a pandemic, all those situations have much more in common. Customers will raise questions, clients will cancel orders, investors will get anxious, employees will lose jobs, competitors will sense opportunity, and authorities can come knocking. No matter what, crises unfortunately happen, and no company can consider itself immune to them. Your job as a leader is not only to understand this, but to be able to do something about it. And this is the first reason we need to be prepared. But there is much more. Among the many elements that can influence the extent and the impact of a crisis, the way we react is decisive. Companies able to respond quickly and efficiently suffer less damage, and sometimes can even turn a crisis into an opportunity. And this is exactly the reason why crisis management gets in action. So, let's frame crisis management. When talking about crisis management, this is the application of strategies designed to help organizations to avoid, maximize the response, minimize the losses, respond, and recovery to sudden, significant negative events. As we already said, in recent days, we became more familiar with many words like crisis management, continuity management, disaster recoveries, hazards, planning, preparedness, and so on. But sometimes all those concepts might be quite foggy and overlapping. So first of all, let's make it clear. Many distinctions are not going to help you proactively and giving you a pragmatic approach in time of crisis. So, despite the scholar distinctions, I wish to take home an easy frame that can help your crisis management approach, and I wish to outline the typical crisis management life cycle. A crisis has a typical life cycle that, accordingly to different professionals, is divided into a varied number of phases that might go from 3 to 7. According to my experience, a life cycle of a crisis can be ideally divided into 4 phases. 1 happening before the crisis, 2 happening during the crisis but at different stages, and the 4th happening after the crisis. The first phase, as you see, is planning. As the name implies, the focus point at this moment is on preparation. In other words, thinking ahead and anticipate multiple crisis scenarios and create internal processes to react to them. The second phase is mitigation. It has to deal with early signal detection. As soon as a potential crisis appears to the horizon, in the second phase, we mostly take proactive measures to contain the damage. The third phase happens during the event, is the response. In this moment, we are in the middle of the absolute emergency, where often we do not have time to think, we do not have time to plan, but in this phase we only have time to act. This is the very delicate phase, aimed at minimizing losses and maximizing business continuity, that requires coordination, cooperation, and quick actions that often need to match with urgent decisions, with scarce resources, and unfortunately, with incomplete information. The fourth phase is recovery. It comes after the crisis has come to an end. So, it is our post-crisis phase, aimed to getting back to a normal or to a new normal as soon as conditions permit. As the impact of the COVID-19 is still evolving across the globe, you might find yourself in different and sometimes multiple stages of this circle. Depending on the place you are, you might be now still actively respond to coronavirus outbreak or already starting to recover from it and from its consequences. But still, our work would encompass far more than just recovery. All great crises, and this one will not be different, come to an end. And this is a good news. After the crisis ends, planning will restart. It's like a loop. It's never ending. We will see what went wrong. We will identify lessons, and hopefully we will learn some of them. figuring out ways to better prepare ourselves for the next crisis. Believe me, when everything will be over, this painful experience will give you a rare degree of awareness and pragmatism that will help us to reshape at its best our crisis management plan in order to prevent any future crisis. We said that careful preparation and planning is a key step to any crisis management process. Plans and procedures provide a roadmap for companies' operations. Preparedness is extremely important in any occasion, and it's even more so in time of crisis. It's probably a loss that a crisis shuts down ordinary operation, if only for a few hours, causing productivity and revenue loss. Without proper preparations, those few hours might tragically stretch into days or even weeks. Having a plan before a crisis strikes can help minimize downtime. A crisis management plan could be effective and a very effective tool for managing certain aspects and saving time, providing practical information, useful forms to proceed with notification to competent authorities and so on, and avoiding the most common mistakes. In fact, given the low probability that many managers and employees having gained enough experience in dealing with crises in previous career experience, clear instructions provided by a plan to take proper actions without delay will help them avoid the most common mistakes, and this is extremely important. Companies that can anticipate multiple crisis scenarios and organize themselves in the golden hours are better in protecting and reshaping partnerships and alliances, in securing business continuity and adapting their operations into a mutating landscape. Proactive and effective crisis management can not only mitigate the effect of the crisis, but even turn it into an opportunity and enhancing the company ethic and influence your stakeholders' judgment and trust. Some case histories indicate that a crisis may even turn to be a business opportunity, but in any case, it's essential to adopt a proactive and socially responsible attitude, and to be consistent and coherent and transparent in your relationship with all your stakeholders. Properly managing a crisis can really contribute to maintain or gain your competitive advance. Hence, many companies use a crisis management plan to prepare managers' paths for them. Usually, a crisis management plan contains few fundamentals that you can see in this slide that determine the overall structure. A plan defines the crisis management team with its contact sheet, including stakeholder contact sheet, does the risk assessment of the company, contains any incident report, any form, any notification form that you may be using during the crisis. Draft some strategy worksheets in order to anticipate multiple crisis scenarios and create internal processes to deal with them. Then contains a part dedicated to media monitoring, and at last, a post-crisis evaluation and recovery intervention part. Any crisis management plan might be focused at least on 4 simple S's: staff, space, and system. With staff, we indicate that we need to train and protect our workers as people is at the core of any organization. Staff, provide and protect the gear you need, the gear of your company. Space, concentrate over securing and defending your work environment and facilities. And at last but not the least, protect your system, including infrastructural and logistical organization, but at last but not the least, all the relationships with your stakeholders. Focusing on those 4 S's involves asking yourself for each point of which the plan is composed, if it is complete to cover the needs and the points of view of the 4 S's. In this way, you'll make sure that you have at least a minimum package that will allow you to face any kind of crisis, whether it is a general strike, a hurricane, or a pandemic. Let me give you now some little example of how these 4 S's can be applied to COVID-19 recent outbreak in order to build a comprehensive and functional crisis management plan. Let's start with staff. First of all, in fact, we always need to think about our people and after people who are involved in our organization, as people are the main asset of any organization. Let's think about the COVID-19. Many things can be done in order to protect people, and unfortunately, we do not have time to see all of them and to take care about any single measure. But in general, taking care of staff means protecting their health conditions, and this is one of the main responsibilities any employers have. Promote personal and environmental hygiene, reduce human-to-human contact, educate your staff about washing hands, etc., provide sanitizers, PPE, promote social distancing are all efficient measures to contain the virus and to protect your people and with them, the company. Sometimes the most effective forms of support are not always obvious. Let's say that COVID taught us that a worker's safety is not just about a particular piece of PPE, and unfortunately many workers during the pandemic perceived their working place as a source of risk. I remember that quite a lot of years ago, during the SARS outbreak in Singapore, some workers reported that they changed their clothes in the garage rather than taking the risk of taking the virus in contact with their familiars and their family members at home. So some companies succeed in providing them a simple set of instructions on how they were protected and how they can behave at work, what to do when coming back home, in order to help them feel more comfortable and reassured. And this worked. So please provide your staff cultural and material tools of protecting. Talk with them. Do not close the communication. Let the lines of communication open. So those who feel at risk are not led to hide relevant information about their health status, fearing the consequences. And this works in any crisis. Let's talk about staff. Also, when taking care about staff, we have a lot of elements to consider. Let's think about the actual COVID-19 situation and how staff is important in this case. We had a lot of problems dealing with supply chain and a lot of inventory levels. So what can we do? We can check the inventory levels, calculate carefully our days of supply. of our products and raw material and components, considering the changings on consumer demand. This will help also to forecast the future demand of our products because, during COVID-19, some categories experienced a high increase in volumes and in consumptions, but some of them experienced just an increase in sales volumes and not in consumptions due to panic buying. In some cases, we do not only buy more, but we consume more. This is the typical example of the sanitizing, alcohol, disinfectant wipes, and in general, all the products related to virus and its preventions, from face masks to food supplements. From some other products, as I said, sales volume increased, but consumption remained unchanged. Consumers responded to the pandemic by purchasing more goods for fear to scarcity, but consumption did not increase, with consequent post-crisis volume drops that we are expecting in late August and September due to the need to get rid of the stocks. Forecasting the demand and reshape the portfolio, recalibrate your production, defining new stock-keeping units, direct all the investments in the right directions will be very important today. And will be very important also to imagine a post-COVID scenario. The speed, the intuition, the ability to find and select new suppliers, the braveness of launching new products or putting in standby some other project will be paramount in this phase. Space. Keeping the workplace clean and hygienic is very important. During COVID-19, we need to clean high-touch surfaces such as door handles, workstations, and any kind of cleaning of the workplace helped preventing contamination. Production plants might undergo additional sanitation measures. Updated recommendation on cleaning and disinfection procedures for production plant should be followed consistently and correctly and according to WHO and CDC indications. System. For what concerns system, I think that the most important question we have to ask ourselves is what is our biggest single risk issue? And then map all the critical points of failure within the organization that can impact on our most important issue. We have to bear in mind that not all risks are created equal. Some give bigger headaches than others, and identifying priorities and main risks will be very important when it will come to continuity management today. Understanding what is the most critical issue for your firm and your business sector will help you adopt targeted practices to minimize the challenge and keep your firm as secure as possible. Long before becoming POTUS, Dwight Eisenhower said, "Plans are worthless, but planning is everything." This may seem a paradox, especially during a crisis management webinar dedicated to crisis planning, but I totally agree on this point. What I meant was that there is a very great distinction between having a plan and planning. Because when you are planning for an emergency, you must start with this one thing, the very definition of emergency that is unexpected, therefore is never going to happen the way we imagine it. This consideration leads us to some frequently asked questions about plans' efficacy. How can we plan for the unexpected? How could a plan fit so many different scenarios? What are the limits of a crisis management plan? Because planning for every contingency is really impossible. There is no one-size-fits-all plan for dealing with any crisis. Nevertheless, having a plan is not useless. As you have noticed, many of the slides we have seen today show lighthouses and storms. This is because the manager of a company hit by a crisis doesn't work in railways, is not a train conductor who drives the company on tracks, but it's like a motor captain of a ship that sails in the perfect storm, where your crisis management plan is like having a lighthouse. Crises are complex scenarios that require a set of coordinated efforts to understand the situation, exert control over the event, and take proper actions to reduce negative consequences. Crises demand swift and effective decision-making and a well-organized and coordinated structure that turns decision into proper actions. Therefore, a crisis management plan shall not be crafted or intended as a step-by-step guide to manage a crisis. Think about your plan as a reference tool. As we said, a CMP is like a lighthouse, not like tracks on the railway. Moreover, many plans, unfortunately, are ignored until the crisis emerges. They lie on remote shelves or on remote servers, and few people read them in advance. So please, if you have one, read your plan. No one updates plans. Hence, an emergency plan needs to be a living document that is periodically adapted to changing circumstances. So please update your plans. And finally, plans might be tested in advance. And training is very important in order to deal with specific simulations. I wish to spend 2 more words about training, because a lot of people ask me, how can we train for the unexpected and how can we train for crisis management? Reacting properly under pressure is a pretty rare instinctive skill, and even more rarely it's paper-based. Plans need to be put in practice to gain confidence with protocols and might be tested at least once a year. I prefer 2. Practicing provides the chance to acquire the right automatism, and where it is possible, places the emphasis on the coexistence of what is known and what it is unknown. Training, moreover, offers us the opportunity to understand how it is taking decision under pressure, with few or partial information and limited time and resources. Training can teach team members to work together, to act coordinately, and acquire the right automatism to respond promptly, even under pressure. Exercising and training constitute a key task to get ready for any crisis, even through periodical crisis scenario simulation. For example, let's say that your organization needs to train its employees to manage a product failure or a contamination that will lead to a product recall. Well, your crisis management team could stage the scenario by being notified by a severe adverse reaction reported from a consumer. So the team has to go through the steps and procedures to react to this alert, taking proper action, collecting all the information, running the lab analysis, engaging the media, interfacing with stakeholders, just like in a real crisis. This is what I think that will work as a training. It is therefore extremely important that despite having a plan and training, your employees acquire a method, the right attitude, and they act with responsibility and a methodological approach, since only the acquisition of a method can help to face completely unknown situations operating in conditions of stress and urgency. This leads me to the meaning of the word crisis. Originating from the ancient Greek, the word crisis meant the activity consisting in separating cereal grains from straw and chaff. Therefore, at the very beginning, the term had a clear agricultural derivation from which it comes the translated meaning of to choose, also understood as to decide or capacity of discernment. The word crisis thus passed to indicate a negative condition that concerns a deterioration, a disturbance, a snag of a certain status quo, but this negative polarization occurred only in 1921 when, let's say, following the collapse of Wall Street Stock Exchange. The word crisis, let's say, remembers us every day that crisis needs lean decision-making processes and proper actions to be taken. In few words, any crisis needs the capacity of discernment. So, since we are almost come to the end of our journey, I would like to leave you with a piece of advice that might help you in an everyday decision-making process, as COVID-19 and any future crisis will require a lot of decision to be taken. I've been married to a fighter pilot of the Air Force for almost 14 years. When he was a pilot in training, a very young pilot in training, he received a piece of advice that turns over my mind anytime I find myself facing with a crisis. He was taught a mantra to face with any flight emergency that works very well also for us in our business environment. A 4-step process that outlines the proper critical action procedure to properly respond to any emergency. Maintain aircraft control. Analyze the situation. Take proper actions and land as soon as conditions permit. As you see, effective crisis management requires every single day the same 4 basic elements. We might think comprehensively about crisis management. It is not only maintaining control over the situation and over ourselves, it is not only understanding the situation, its causes, and the possible impact and solutions, and it's not about responding quickly and properly while keeping the organization running and taking care about the continuity. A crisis also means landing as soon as conditions permit, as conditions can get worse, and you never know what will it be tomorrow. So my suggestion is every day, we never asked to take relevant decision in dealing with crisis, repeat to yourself this mantra and bring your feet on the ground as soon as possible. Business normality is great. In everyday work, we set priorities, we deal with standards procedures, we create a lot of opportunities. On a daily basis, our routine will make us feel immune to great disruptions. And this is a good feeling. But unfortunately, not every day it's a good day. All of a sudden, crisis can happen. And that is exactly when leaders like you might step in actively and take a prominent role. I'm sure that you all have a lot of resources, particularly in the form of people, skills, and capability, which can contribute towards developing the capacity of reacting to crisis and recovering from any form of crisis, starting from COVID-19. The difference between a good day and a bad day lies much more in good execution and safe landing than in intention. Crisis scenarios are by definition changeable. Mistakes are made every day by anyone, and positions can be re-examined, but the ability to operate, execute, measure, and control, act, and deliver will create positive energy, produce short-time results, and will cure symptoms of the disease, reduce suffering, and will change the world. So, all of us, we might have some bad days. It happens. Please do not let a bad day become a bad week. And good luck.
Well, here's our bonus information time, also known as the question and answer period. And Dr. Cane is ready to take all of your questions. So let's get started. Here's your first question. When preparing for a crisis, does it make a difference if you're a small or a large company? And what should we take into consideration for resources and tools?
Yes, when preparing for a crisis, that makes a few difference from a small and large company. The very difference is in reacting. Small companies are generally better, faster, more flexible, more capable of reacting in shorter time. This depends in part on a greater flexibility of smaller corporate structures, but also on greater sensitivity to pre-alarm signals, which are often ignored in large companies.
You indicate planning is key and an important step to cope with the crisis. How do you plan for the post-crisis phase?
Yeah, the situation today is still highly uncertain and really ambiguous. And maybe it's a little bit early to talk about the post-crisis phase. In general, what we do is run in different scenarios. So the purpose of this work is not to have a crystal ball and to know the unknown, neither to discuss what is going to happen in the next months, but rather to prepare for many different situations. So my suggestion is take some time as a team to develop different scenarios, and in preparing scenarios, avoid limiting them to 2 or 3, but do at least 4 different scenarios that are not a simple variation of the same, let's say, feel and look. Then, for each of them, ask yourself again, what is my biggest risk issue? And map all the critical points of failure within your organization for each scenario. This will help to face post-COVID-19.
Great. And another question, how do you prioritize the anticipatory issues to start to build out resources or messaging?
I prioritize, as I said, using the 4S's, because we all know what are the priorities. And we prioritize, first of all, staff, people, health, and their conditions is so important for everybody. And then we prioritize staff, space, and systems. Sometimes it's very difficult to give priorities because we are overwhelmed. But I really ask you to, and highly suggest, to put always on top people.
Great. Over your career, you've worked with many different clients and have had very different situations that they've been in. Could you share one experience that you consider notable and what was learned from it?
Yeah, personally speaking, I can share my tougher experience, my tougher lesson learned, because I think that maybe some of you experienced the same difficulties at the very beginning of COVID-19. I think that the tougher thing is to convince people to act beforehand, to take pre-alarm signals seriously, let's say. There are many rational reasons for late response, and we always fight with these rational reasons because these reasons may include the risk of being accused of overreacting or the reluctance to do things that can interfere with business efficiency or opportunities. But it goes without saying that at the very beginning, decision cannot be taken lighthearted, and any analysis afterwards may appear too easy. But the reality is that the wait and see approach has never been a good approach, and for many reasons is the go-to crisis method. So crises do not solve themselves alone, and the most important thing is do not waste time and be able to convince people to take the situation in hand immediately.
Most companies are facing a lot of crises in the sense that input prices are going up on a daily basis due to the COVID-19 situation, which has affected importations of imports. What must these companies do to survive? Do they have to lay off workers?
This is a very, very good one and very difficult one. It might be, there might be the need to renounce to some workers. In the economy of things, we are asked also to do many difficult decisions during COVID-19. So, unfortunately, a lot of workplaces are going to be lost in the future. If this is, a rational response due to the fact that we put first the survivor of the company, it could be an option, yes.
Yeah. In your experience, who should be part of the crises committee?
In my experience, we have to try to choose senior managers that have the experience, that have already gained a certain experience, and first of all, that can take decision. Because if we take people that are not able to transform the decision to actions, a crisis management committee will be just an advisor board, and it would be useless. So the better thing is to select managers that can immediately transform decision to actions. Then Another point is to choose people that have the right attitude, the right posture, because taking decision under extreme time and psychological pressure is not easy, and is not paper based, let's say. So character, posture, and attitude are very important too.
Dr. Cane, you're coming to us from Italy today. You live there. So you're right in the eye of the COVID-19 storm. You probably were in it before most of the folks on this, your country was actually experiencing the infection before it actually made it into the countries that are of interest and where most of our audience is listening in today. So agriculture is considered an essential business. How has the food and the feed industry been coping there with this crisis?
Yes, Mary Pat. As everyone knows, Italy was in the eye of the storm at the very beginning of February. It was the first Western country to be seriously hit by the pandemic. At the very beginning, some of us were able to respond to the crisis, especially learning from previous experiences coming from the SARS or the avian bird flu. We focus, first of all, on guaranteeing health, workers' health, first of all, because this is very important for business continuity, avoiding supply chain disruptions, and so on. Personally, we closed our office the 20th of February, but generally speaking, even after the WHO declared the pandemic, unfortunately, here in Europe, many public and private decision makers failed to take rapid mitigation measures, and this was a catastrophe in Italy, and put in critical condition a lot of companies, especially in agriculture. Fortunately, here it was wintertime and agriculture was sleeping, let's say. Now that it's summer, things are going a little bit better, and we are harvesting and working almost as usual, just taking care about the health processes that can protect our workers.
Okay, thank you. Actually, at this particular point, we need to go ahead and close the question and answer period. However, I just want to let you know that we will be forwarding those questions on to Dr. Cane, so you'll be able to get the answers. Right now, we have coming up next Jerry Hayden. He's our soybean farmer who is currently serving as the chairman of WISHH. Jerry has some examples of the type of disruptions his company has experienced over the years, steps that they've taken, and Jerry also has an update for us on the status of his operation.
Thank you everyone for joining WISHH's webinar. I'm Jerry Hayden. 2020 is my 46th year farming our Calhoun, Kentucky fields. I'm thankful to have my wife Judy and my son Ben by my side in our farming operation. My daughter Emily is a veterinarian. As you can see from my photo, I'm a proud grandfather too. I hope someday the next generation also wants to raise soybeans. One of the crisis management strategies we use on our farm is we always pre-order our seed, fertilize, fuel, and other farming inputs. When COVID hit earlier this year, we had supplies we needed to plant as planned. We were up before dawn to get the crops in the field. We often called it a day around 10 p.m. That's life on a farm. I'm pleased to report these soybeans are doing fine. We hope for a yield of about 65 bushel per acre when we harvest them in October. Despite COVID-19, I still get up wanting to farm every day. COVID-19 has changed our lives. I am not a fan of wearing a mask. I would like to go back to our old lives and ways of doing business. I would like our WISHH team to be able to travel to you. I would like for WISH's strategic partners to come to the United States for training and technical assistance. However, my 46 years of farming are a reminder that we can adapt and keep feeding people throughout the world. I have had years when our crops suffered due to cold, hot, wet, dry weather, hail, and pests. But in the end, we come through. The same is true today. Together with leaders like those of you on this webinar, we can pursue new opportunities to make sure more protein is available for people, livestock, poultry, and fish.
And what would a webinar be without a short survey? So we're asking you to please complete a really short survey that we'll be sending you at the close of this webinar. We literally use that information to go ahead and not only determine the value of the content of the current webinar, but also to help guide the content selection and topics that we put together and the way that we organize the webinars in the future. You'll notice here too that there is an email address that if you have any additional questions for Dr. Cane, that you can go ahead and submit those to wish@soy.org. And we'll make sure that the answers are pushed out to you, both the questions and the answers. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Cane for joining us today. We've had some really fantastic insights. And I really would like for you guys to hopefully you're leaving this webinar with a few ideas and at least probably a new perspective on what you should be considering incorporating into your company's crisis management plan. I sure hope so. And as one of my Dominican Republic colleagues said to me last week, we never become good sailors, Mary, if we always have smooth seas. So here's to all of us having crisis management plans in place that help our companies chart the best course we can through our current rough seas. Happy sailings, all. We appreciate you joining us today.